Time, the word slips from our tongues so easily, as if we understand it, contain it even. It hangs on our walls, marches across our screens, ticks through our wrists, and governs every waking breath with invisible authority. We speak of it with reverence and with fear, as though time were both a god and a tyrant. I don't have enough time, we say. Time is running out. We celebrate birthdays. We mourn anniversaries. We measure progress, decay, memory, all by this ghost that none of us has ever touched. And yet, have you ever paused to ask what it truly is, not in theory, but in essence? What is this thing you have been taught to chase? Fear, respect, obey. What if everything you've learned about it is a beautiful lie? In the quiet space between one tick and the next, there is a doorway, not to the future or the past, but to the truth, a truth. That time as we know it may be the greatest illusion ever conceived, not a river flowing from past to future, but a house with many rooms, rooms you were taught to forget existed. When you were young, you were told stories about yesterday and promises of tomorrow. You learned to measure your life in linear strands, seconds into minutes, minutes into hours, hours into years. School bells rang at designated times. Lunch began at noon. Christmas returned every December. You were handed calendars like maps and clocks like compasses, but no one told you that the map was a fiction and the compass a magician's trick. Here is the heresy we propose tonight. Time is not what you've been told, not a straight line, not an arrow, not a treadmill pulling you towards some great end. It is a perception, one that you, as a being of boundless awareness, were trained to wear. Like a collar, you've lived inside a narrative stitched by seconds, narrated by the rhythm of artificial constructs. But this story was designed to keep you bound, not free. Step back and observe. Trees do not tell time, yet they grow with a wisdom deeper than your calendar. The ocean does not mark hours, yet it dances with the moon in precise harmony. Stars die and are reborn in cycles far beyond the comprehension of wristwatches. Time to them is not a schedule. It is a breath, a pulse, a spiral. And so too were you meant to live, not in a race against the clock, but in rhythm with the eternal. But something happened. At some point, humanity traded fluidity for rigidity. We exchanged cycles for countdowns. We erected machines to count time for us, and then became slaves to their rhythm. We forgot that time is not a master, but a canvas. We let the seconds dictate our value. The hours decide our worth. I'm too old, we say. It's too late. These are not truths. They are enchantments, cast by a civilization drunk on the illusion of forward motion. You've likely felt it before, that moment when time slips, when you're lost in art, in music, in love, when minutes dissolve, and you become eternal, if only for a breath. That feeling, that weightless drift, is not an escape from time. It's a return to what is real, a remembering. In those instances, the machinery of chronology dissolves, and you touch something vast and unscripted. We live inside clocks, built by our own minds, but the mind, magnificent as it is, was never meant to be the jailer of time. Rather, it is a lens, a way to experience the unfolding of now in myriad flavors. The true essence of time cannot be captured in a stopwatch. It cannot be taught in a textbook or charted on a graph. It must be felt. And in feeling it, you begin to understand that the now is not a point between two vanishing edges. It is all there is. This revelation is not meant to dismiss the usefulness of structure. The sun still rises. Crops still need seasons. Your heart still has its beat. But the experience of time, the way we live under its rule, suffer by its passage. long for its return. That is the lie. The idea that you are running out, that you missed your moment, that you are behind in some race. That idea was planted, and it thrives only if you never question it. Tonight, as midnight approaches, a symbolic hour, ancient and heavy with endings and beginnings, you are invited to challenge the spell. This is not a warning, but an awakening. What lies beyond the clock face is not chaos, but liberation. You were not born into a ticking prison. You were born into a field of infinite now, a garden, blooming in every direction. Everything you've been taught about time was shaped to serve a world obsessed with control. But now, that world is fracturing. The illusion trembles. The hands of the clock quiver at the edge of midnight, not because something is ending, but because something is remembering. To truly grasp how time has been misrepresented, reduced from an ocean to a ticking metronome, we must begin with the core lie. That time is linear, objective, and external to you. This, more than any other illusion, has dictated the rhythm of modern consciousness. It is the backbone of capitalism, the structure of education, the metric of success, aging, history itself. And yet, once you look beneath the scaffolding, you will find that this time we honor so faithfully is not absolute. It is a projection, a lens, a convenience, mistaken for truth. The human mind, marvelous and myth-making, cannot easily rest in the vastness of the eternal present. It seeks sequence, pattern, predictability. In this hunger, we created the story of time, a one-way river beginning in the past and flowing endlessly into an unknown future. This model offers comfort, it offers control, but it also costs us something unspeakably vital: the intimacy with the present moment. The ability to live outside of expectation, outside of regret. Time as presented to you is an architecture of expectation. Children are told what age they must learn to speak, to read, to graduate. Adults are told what age they should succeed, marry, reproduce, retire. Those who do not meet these milestones are labeled behind, as if they have failed to keep pace with some divine stopwatch. But who wound that watch? Who decided what hour your dreams should arrive? You see, the deepest trick of time isn't just measurement, it's hierarchy. The future is imagined to be better, more valuable, more real. The past is often glorified or feared, but the present, the now, is fleeting, ignored, a mere hallway between destinations. And so we live not in the moment, but toward the moment. We postpone presence in favor of planning, reminiscing, regretting. We miss now because we were told it was never enough. But the now is not a small thing. It is the gateway, the core, the infinite. Every experience you have ever had, every memory, every hope, it was born in a now. And no matter how fast you chase tomorrow, you will always arrive in another version of this same sacred instant. There is no escape from the now, because there is nothing outside it. This is where the illusion reveals itself. If you close your eyes and try to find tomorrow, where is it? Not on your skin, not in your breath. If you search your body for last year, you find only echoes in the mind. These concepts are useful, yes, but they are not real in the way your heartbeat is real. They are stories held in your nervous system, maps in your consciousness, projections painted on the canvas of the eternal now. From the cosmic perspective, time is not a ruler, it is a spiral. It loops, it folds, it revisits, it reverberates. This is why certain lessons come back around. This is why cycles appear in your relationships, your emotions, your dreams. You are not traveling down a road, so much as moving through a living mandala, one that unfolds from the center outward. Another truth often hidden: different minds experience time differently. A child's summer feels infinite, An elder's decade may pass like a single inhale. Trauma slows time to a crawl. Joy can make it vanish. And yet, we still pretend time is universal. We forget that time bends to the soul. It is not a grid imposed upon you. It is a mirror of your state of being. And so, when you were taught about time, what you were really taught was obedience to Kronos, the mechanical, industrial god of scheduling and repetition. But there is another force, one the ancients whispered of Kairos, the time of divine timing. Soul timing, right timing, not quantity, but quality. The moment when the fruit is ready to fall, when the soul is ready to leap. Kairos is not found on a clock. It is felt in the bones, in the gut, in the shimmer behind the eyes, when something clicks into place beyond logic. This is the hidden law. Your life unfolds according to Kairos, not Kronos. You bloom when your soul is ready, not when the calendar says you should. And when you forget this, when you panic because you feel too late or not yet, you are measuring your existence by someone else's lie. Time has been weaponized not just against your productivity, but against your being. You are told you are running out of it, that you are too old to begin, that you must hurry, that delay is failure. But what if none of that is true? What if every moment has always waited for you lovingly until you were ready to meet it? To wake up from the myth of time is not to reject schedules or abandon structure. It is to remember that you are the one who moves the hands of the clock within your own universe. The true revolution is not in stopping time, but in stepping out of its trance. There is an old tale, spoken softly in the desert winds of forgotten temples, about a traveler who sought the future. He walked for what felt like years, always chasing a horizon that whispered promises just beyond reach. Along the way, he met an old woman, stirring a pot beneath a tree that never bloomed. She asked where he was headed, and he replied, "To meet what's next." The woman smiled, poured him tea, and said, "Then you'll walk forever." What's next never arrives. It only changes its costume. The traveler didn't understand and continued his journey, never realizing he'd walked in a circle that brought him back to that same tree with every sunrise. The pot was always warm, the tea always steeped, but he never truly tasted it. This story is not just myth. It is a mirror. We are all that traveler sprinting towards some imagined then, believing we'll find peace, purpose, enlightenment when we finally arrive. And yet, we circle the tree of now, ignoring the wisdom it offers. We ask what's next, while life offers us warm tea in this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. Time, when personified, is not a line but a trickster, like the coyote in indigenous mythology, or the fox in fairy tales. It lures you deeper into the woods, promising treasure just one step further. And just when you think you've caught up, it shifts shape, becoming memory, becoming anticipation, becoming regret. You can't hold it, you can't trap it, but you can see through it. The symbol of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, is not just an image of infinity, but of circular time, life feeding itself, the end giving birth to the beginning. What if, instead of thinking of life as a march from point A to point B, we saw it as a spiral staircase? You revisit the same places, grief, joy, fear, love, but at different heights, with different understanding. Time is not pulling you forward, it is deepening you. And then there is the dream of the mirror clock. In some ancient texts now lost to dust and time itself, they spoke of a hidden device that did not measure when you were, but who you were becoming. Each tick of its hands revealed not a number, but an emotion, a lesson, a transformation. Imagine a timepiece not of seconds, but of soul states. A clock where 3 o'clock is reconciliation and noon is release. What would your day look like then? Another story. A child once asked her grandfather, "What time is it in heaven?" The old man chuckled, brushed the girl's hair behind her ear, and replied, "It's always now. The angels don't wear watches." What a strange and beautiful truth. We wear watches not to keep time, but to believe we have it. Angels perhaps have no need for such illusions. Their wings move to the rhythm of presence. Even the myth of aging is a parable misunderstood. We believe time erodes us, that it chisels away at our youth until we are nothing but dust. But what if aging isn't decay, but fermentation? What if you are becoming wine, not withering fruit? The skin may wrinkle, but the spirit, timeless, untethered, only grows richer, more nuanced, more potent. The tragedy isn't growing old. It's believing that time is subtracting from you. The ancient Mayans saw time not as forward progression, but as overlapping cycles, sacred calendars, nested within one another like Russian dolls. Each day had a soul, a destiny, a music. They did not mark time, they danced it. They saw prophecies not as predictions, but as harmonies waiting to be played again. In their view, time could be sung, painted, eaten, remembered not by hour, but by energy. Let us turn now to dreams. In the landscape of dreams, time shatters. You live entire lifetimes in seconds. You experience memories that never happened, futures that never came. And yet, in those dreams, you do not question the logic of time. You accept it. Why? Because your soul knows that time is fluid. Dreams do not abide by the Kronos of the waking world, because your deeper self never agreed to those terms. Time then is like a costume the infinite wears, so it can be understood in fragments. But every so often, the mask slips, a déjà vu, a memory you don't remember making, a synchronicity that defies statistics. These are not errors. These are the true moments when the soul cracks the illusion and lets you peek backstage. And what do you see there? Not a ticking clock, but a timeless eye, watching gently from the center of it all. Even language conspires to preserve the illusion. We say wasting time, as if it is a resource. But you cannot waste what does not belong to you. You do not own time, nor does it own you. You are not moving through time. You are creating it. You are the painter, the brush, and the stroke. All of existence, then, becomes a grand theater of now and time. Time is the lighting technician. It sets the mood, it changes the hue, but it never steps on stage. The actors, the soul, the breath, the choice, they are the true stars. And the audience, perhaps, it is eternity itself, watching as you rediscover what was never lost. So now that the illusion has cracked and the mask of time has slipped, the question presses itself forward like sunlight through stained glass. What do we do with this awareness? How can one live in a world of calendars, deadlines, schedules, alarms, while holding in the heart the truth that time is not a tyrant, but a mirage? How do we integrate the cosmic into the concrete? The answer is not to abandon structure, but to reimagine relationship. It begins not with rebellion, but with reverence. To live outside the clock does not mean throwing it away. It means no longer kneeling before it. It means understanding that time is your servant, not your sovereign. Take, for example, the simple act of waking up. Most do it by the command of an alarm, a buzzing mechanical summons into the day. But what if, instead of rising at a dictated hour, you first paused not to check your phone, but to check your soul? How am I feeling? Where in the spiral of being do I find myself today? What is ready to unfold in this? Now, regardless of what the clock says, these are not indulgences, they are revolutions. Small sacred acts of reclaiming your life from automation. Consider your conversations. How often do we rush them, measuring them by time instead of depth? I only have 10 minutes, but what if, in 10 soul-filled minutes, a lifetime of healing could pass between two people? Time expands in sincerity. The heart speaks in rhythms no clock can capture. The greatest moments of your life, did you know what time they happened, or only how they felt? This is where you begin to live from time, not in time. You don't rush the flower to bloom, yet somehow you trust it will. You don't instruct the tide, yet it always knows when to come in. Likewise, you begin to trust your inner seasons. Some days will move fast, some slow. Some chapters in life will unfold like thunder, others like mist. It is not your job to hurry or delay them, only to be with them fully. Even productivity shifts when viewed through this prism. We've been taught that more output equals more value, that the worth of a day is in how much you got done. But have you noticed sometimes you work for hours and achieve nothing real? Other times, a single conversation, a solitary insight, changes the course of your path. Productivity is not about time spent, it's about presence embodied. Presence then is the true currency. Not hours, not years. Presence, a kind of sacred attention that melts the illusion of linearity and brings eternity into form. And presence is only accessible when you no longer fear the passing of time. When you stop believing that now is a small, fragile thing and realize it is the only portal to the infinite you will ever need. In relationships, this shift is equally transformative. When we impose timelines on others, when we expect them to heal, change, love, or respond according to our clocks, we fracture the sanctity of connection. But when we honor that everyone lives within their own spiral, their own dance of Kairos, we become more gentle, more patient. We stop trying to make people catch up or slow down, and instead, we meet them where they are, when they are. This is not passivity, it is power, reclaimed. You begin to see time as texture, not ruler, as an energy to work with, not a wall to fight against. You learn to sense when to act, when to wait, when to leap, when to rest, not by schedule, but by listening. Deep listening to your body, to your intuition, to the silent clock that ticks within your rib cage, not on your wrist. Even your sense of aging transforms. Instead of dreading birthdays as markers of what's lost, you begin to view them as initiations, not points of decline, but thresholds of depth. You are not running out of time, you are ripening, becoming more of what you always were. More flavor, more soul, more substance. The years do not take from you, they reveal you. And when you live like this outside the myth of linear time, you begin to notice strange things. Synchronicities increase. Serendipity becomes frequent. You think of someone and they call. You arrive somewhere and the perfect moment unfolds. This is not magic. In the fantasy sense, it is alignment. It is what happens when you are no longer swimming upstream against the artificial flow of time, but dancing with the rhythm of the real. This rhythm does not speak in hours or weeks. It speaks in signs, sensations, instincts. The body knows, the heart knows. Time was never outside of you. It was always waiting inside, humming its forgotten melody, until you were quiet enough to hear it. This way of living this time-liberated life is not always easy. The world still expects punctuality. Rent is still due. The clock still ticks. But now, you see it all differently. You walk through it with eyes open, no longer hypnotized. You are no longer the pawn of time, but its artist, painting each moment, not with panic, but with presence. And what you create will echo far beyond the hour it was born in. If everything you've been taught about time is a lie, then the truth waiting beneath that lie is not cold or disorienting. It is warm, unfolding, liberating, like discovering that the cage was never locked, like realizing that the river you've been struggling to cross was only a reflection. You were told that time was a ruler and you had to measure up, that you were late or early or right on schedule, that you had to rush toward success, escape regret, outrun mortality. But what if none of that was ever real? What if time, true time, is not something you move through, but something that moves through you? This is your call, your invitation, your re-entry into sacred time, not as something that can be lost or wasted, but as something that was always yours, a gift you carry in every breath. You are not running out of time, you are awakening in time, and that changes everything. Close your eyes even now and feel into this moment. Not the clock time, not the to-do list or the deadlines, but the living now. The hum behind your heartbeat, the stillness beneath the surface of your thoughts. That is where time has always waited. Not in the minutes between appointments, but in the spaces where presence arises. That space is infinite. You are not a being rushing toward a finish line. You are a flame, flickering at the intersection of eternity and awareness. You are the observer, the creator, the experiencer all at once. And in each breath, you have the power to stop the wheel not by breaking it, but by stepping off of it. The machine keeps turning, but you don't have to be trapped inside it anymore. The real revolution begins here, in the reclaiming of now, in the refusal to measure your worth by hours worked or milestones met, in the sacred remembering that your soul is not on a schedule. You were never meant to bloom by a calendar. You were meant to bloom by the light of your own becoming. What would life feel like if you no longer feared the passage of time? If you no longer looked at the mirror and asked, "How long do I have?" but instead whispered, "How deeply can I be?" What would change if you allowed yourself to fall back into the rhythm that was always yours, unhurried, unbroken, holy? Yes, clocks will still tick. Deadlines will still come, but they no longer get to tell you who you are. They no longer define your readiness, your ripeness, your power. You may still move within time, but you are no longer of it. You have seen the illusion, and once seen, it cannot bind you again. So here is your turning point. Not a grand explosion, but a quiet, irreversible shift. A deep breath at the edge of midnight. A choice to step beyond the mechanical and into the mystical. To live not as a slave to time, but as a steward of it. To co-create with the universe from a place beyond urgency, beyond delay. From the eternal now where everything is waiting for you, not ahead or behind, but here. And so we return to where we began. Not with a warning, but with a whisper. Time is not a prison. It is a poem. A story you get to rewrite. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Step into it.